afternoon. Welcome to the Wigan Auditorium, Peabody City Hall, for today's award ceremony for the Peabody Police Department. Today is a particularly proud day for the department. We get to honor some of those everyday heroes that are here among us, that every day go out and do their job in service to the rest of the community. I thank all of the people that are here, coming here, including the award recipients themselves. I thank the friends and families of those that are here, because those that send them off to work every day know how difficult it is waiting for them to come home. So I thank you for being here to support them. I want to start off today to just sort of dedicate today's award ceremony to Sergeant Eric Zawacki, who many of you know got banged up pretty bad the other day by an automobile up on Route 1. And I want to recognize Officer Zawacki. I want to ask you that you remember him in your prayers. I want to report to you that he is doing as well as can be expected, that he was actually stood up and went through some physical therapy the other day. I'm not so sure he'll be playing for the Celtics this week, but he is a tough guy. He's been a great community policing guy, a real leader amongst the troops here, and a solid member of the Peabody Police Department. So we'll dedicate today's ceremony to him. And I know he would be present here, and he would be here cheering on his fellow officers. Before we get started on that, I'd like to also recognize a couple of folks that are here in the audience today. And obviously, Mayor Michael Bonfanti is here today. Mayor, if you might want to come up, if we choose to for a moment. And Mayor-elect Ted Betancourt is, we've asked to come today, and he's here today. If you come, and I want to also recognize Chief David Breen, member of the Peabody Police Department, and now the rank of Chief of Police in the town of Linfield, who's come over here to honor some of the folks that he's worked with and honor the Peabody Police Department. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Mayor Bonfanti for just a moment before we start our ceremony.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I was thinking about this awards ceremony today and how all the great things that have been done by our police officers. And, you know, today we're going to specifically mention a number of police officers who have gone above and beyond. But as I thought a little bit more about the awards, I was thinking about the police department in general. Every day when they put the uniform on and they go out to serve the public, they are our heroes. They don't know what to expect, what might happen. So every day they deserve a commendation. And a case in point was the dedication today of Sergeant Eric Zawacki, a man who went out to do his duty, and just like that, something happened. And that's what we have our public safety officials, police, fire, have to face every day. You know, from my office, I hear the alarms go off over at the fire department. And if you don't think that when I hear those alarms go off, that I don't get a lump, because all of them, fire, police, public safety, they are our sons and our grandsons. So when I say, yes, it's terrific, and I am very, very proud of those getting commendations, it really extends to all our public safety people for what they do and what they face every day. I am very, very pleased to say that I believe that our public safety officials, our police department, is the finest police department on the North Shore, and if not the finest in the state. I've watched the training, I've watched the dedication, I've watched the unhesitating response, and I have been absolutely proud to be mayor of the city of Peabody and to be able to work with the men and women and the caliber they have. So today, yes, I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased to see the commendations, but they deserve it every day for what they do. Thank you. I'm just going to invite him.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, thank you. You know, it's with great pleasure that I introduce my friend, Ted Betancourt. Ted knows firsthand what public safety is. He saw it for many, many years in his family, from his father to his cousins. And I know that Ted shares the same respect that I have for our public safety officials. And I know he will be as supportive as I am. Ted, I know you haven't got anything planned, but please come on down and say a few words. Please join me in welcoming Ted.
Thank you, and I'm very honored and proud to be here today. You know, many people have said since the election that I have a great opportunity and that I may be the face of the community going forward, but I don't buy into that at all. I have 3 young daughters, and I'm at the schools very often, and I'm involved in their coaching, and I'm with young kids quite a bit. And when they see me or another politician, they could care less. But when they see a police officer or a firefighter or a teacher, their faces light up, they get excited, and it's you who are the face of the community, and it's you who are going to lead our city forward. And I'm proud to be here to recognize your accomplishments. Too often it seems that we kind of dwell on the negative too much. And certainly the negative is out there. We all know that. There's many challenges going forward. But it's great to be able to sit down and honor those who have done outstanding service like all of you have. And it's great to be a part of that. Certainly we're going to have challenges going forward. And I'm going to need your courage. I'm going to need your toughness. I'm going to need your competence going forward. I'm proud to be the next mayor of this city, and I look forward to working with all of you. I congratulate you, the recipients of the awards, as well as their families, and I'm again proud to be here today. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor-elect, thank you very much for coming here today. And we presented the mayor and the mayor-elect both with a challenge coin from the Peabody Police Department. That is with the seal of the city of Peabody and the logo crest of the Peabody Police Department that every officer wears on his shoulder. And it is the coat of arms that was handed down from George Peabody from the Queen of England to the city of Peabody. We've adopted and adapted to our uniform, and soon we'll be adopting and adapting to the badge that we wear, our badge of office. So to that end, gentlemen, thank you again for coming here today. I also, through Captain DeRosa, just received word that Sergeant Zawacki, sick as he is, called in and said he wished to offer his congratulations to all the men and women that are here today that have received citations, and that he wanted to remind us that he'd never missed one of these himself. So despite him being banged up, despite him being in a hospital bed, he's with us again, all in spirit. So I thank you again. So we'll get started, because we have 27 commendations and a letter of recognition to someone here to some 35 officers. So what we're going to do is we're going to call the folks that are up here. I'll read the citation. The deputy will present them. I will present them with their certificates. The deputy will present them with their challenge coin, and we'll step aside so that folks can take pictures if they like as they come through. I think if that's agreeable to everybody. All right. First group is Deputy Chief Martin Cohen, Detective Robert Feletra, Detective Peter Olson, Detective Ralph Scopa, and Officer Mario Alves. Some of these, by the way, we do this ceremony once a year, so some of these are going to date back to last year before we started. On March 27th of 2010, there was a report of a missing 14-year-old girl. It was feared that as a result of online contact with a male subject, that the girl may be in great danger. The 14-year-old left a note stating she was going to Florida with another male subject. As a result of that report, Deputy Chief Martin Cohen, Detective Robert Feletra, Detective Peter Olson, Detective Ralph Scopa, and Officer Mario Alves began a forensic and internet search in an attempt to locate the missing teenager. As a result of that forensic search, and as a result of use of technology available through the Peabody Police Department officers, Detectives Feletra and Olson, as well as others, used their cellular telephones and able to determine an address for a person who was with that teenager and is contacted, as well as documenting via technology associate areas where this person may be located. This was in the state of Delaware. Through the continued efforts in regard to the internet, chat rooms, social networks, and cellular records, they were able to obtain an address in Dover, Delaware, where she was believed to be. With the assistance of the local, state, and federal authorities in Delaware, this person was successfully returned to her parents unviolated and unharmed. On November 10, 2010, as a result of the efforts of the Peabody Police Department and the Delaware troopers and the Delaware authorities, the suspects were indicted on federal charges for online child exploitation offenses. The suspect faced mandatory sentences of 10 years to life in prison. If not for the quick actions and efforts of the Peabody Police Department with the efforts of the Delaware authorities, this report would not have had a happy ending. I commend Deputy Chief Cohen, Detectives Olson, Faletra, Ralph Scoper, and Officer Mario Ellis for their exemplary performance and meritorious police service to the community in their attention and their devotion to duty. They each shall receive 1 day of compensation time, and these letters of commendation shall be permanently entered into their records of the Peabody Police Department. Gentlemen, congratulations. Thank you. As a side note, you should see what some of these guys can do with technology. Call to the podium, Officer Joseph Gilroy, now Detective Joseph Gilroy. On March 3, 2011, Officer Joseph Gilroy investigated a larceny in past of an elderly couple who had been victims of a scam from an out-of-state contractor. The victim was 74 years old, was approached by a contractor and demanded a check for $480 to work on the couple's residence. The contractor cashed the check, never completed any work, and never worked on the elderly couple's property. Officer Gilroy followed up through his investigative leads, tracked down the contractors, all of which who were located in the state of Maine. The contractor initially told Gilroy that the work was completed, and through a thorough investigation, interview, and interrogation, Officer Gilroy was able to obtain a confession and an admission and restitution complete to the elderly persons. On January 9th of 2011, Officer Gilroy investigated the past B&E, which occurred at the St. Thomas the Apostle Church on Margin Street. Upon arrival, Officer Gilroy obtained information that $1,200 was stolen from the church, containing cash, checks, and sometime overnight. Officer Gilroy investigated, observed footprints that led to an open window. A point of entry was determined, and latent fingerprints were lifted. A former employee was identified as a possible suspect. Officer Gilroy located and interviewed the suspect, obtained a confession. In addition, a second suspect was identified as being involved in the crime. Officer Gilroy was able to recover the personal checks and all of the stolen money as a result of his investigative skills and the use of interview and interrogation techniques. I wish to officially commend Officer Joseph Gilroy for his intention to duty, his devotion to duty, his skill in investigative techniques, surveillance, interview, and interrogation as being within the highest standards of policing and in the Peabody Police Department. Officer Gilroy shall receive 1 day's compensation, and a copy of this letter of commendation shall be permanently entered into his file. Officer Gilroy, congratulations. Thank you. Officer Daniel J. Murphy. On January 8, 2011, Officer Daniel Murphy was assigned a follow-up investigation at Nordstrom's at the North Shore Mall on the report of an attempted larceny. Officer Murphy received information that a male subject had attempted to shoplift $1,800 worth of Burberry handbags, which occurred on January 7, 2011, and that security had intercepted and interrupted the crime by approaching the subject. Officer Murphy reviewed video surveillance tapes, gathered information, including the description of the suspect and the vehicles used. Officer Murphy developed leads which connected this attempted larceny with past attempted larcenies that occurred in October of 2010 involving the same suspects. Armed with this information, Officer Murphy contacted the Saugus Police to corroborate leads, obtain pictures, and to further follow up the investigation. Officer Murphy returned to Nordstrom's, and the photos identified positively the persons that he believed to be suspects as the perpetrators. While Officer Murphy was at Nordstrom's, the suspects again entered the store and stole 4 Burberry handbags valued at $2,565 and then fled in a suspect vehicle. Officer Murphy, with his contacts through the Saugus Police, provided the names and addresses and information of the suspect and requested they be apprehended. A short time later, Saugus Police located and took the suspects into custody. Officer Murphy obtained a search warrant and located the stolen property inside the suspect vehicle. I wish to officially commend Officer Daniel J. Murphy, for his attention to duty, his devotion to duty, his skills in investigative technique, surveillance, and interview interrogation. Officer Murphy shall receive 1 day's compensation, and a copy of this commendation shall be placed in his file. I suspect I won't be shopping at Nordstrom's. Officer Mark Falco. On November 14, 2010, Officer Mark Falco responded to the TMC company on Centennial Drive to respond to the report of the larceny of precious metals. Upon arrival, Officer Falco began a preliminary investigation and interviewing people and reviewing video surveillance of 4 separate larcenies that occurred involving over $8,000. Officer Falco developed suspect information, conducted a follow-up information with the Malden Police Department to corroborate information identifying positively 2 suspects. He then conducted surveillance during the following week and reviewed other officers' reports to develop probable cause to identify the suspects. On November 25th, while again conducting surveillance of TMC, Officer Falco observed 2 suspects enter the property. They gathered evidence, conducted interviews, and ultimately obtained confessions from both suspects. As a result of Officer Falco's skilled use of interview and interrogation, follow-up investigation, and the relentless pursuit of the suspects, including countless hours of surveillance, 1 suspect was arrested at the scene. The other suspect was summoned to court for larceny of the precious metals. I want to officially commend Officer Falco for his attention and devotion to duty, his skills in investigative technique, surveillance, and interview interrogation. They are within the highest standards of the Peabody Police Department. Officer Falco shall receive 1 day's compensation, and this letter of commendation shall be permanently entered into his file. This is not the first time that Officer Falco has been up here. He's one of the officers who continues to do a good job year after year for us, so congratulations. Officer David Bonfanti. On June 12, 2011, Officer David Bonfanti was assigned to the 911 Emergency Operations Center at Peabody Police Headquarters. At 1:30 a.m., a witness reported observing breaking and entering into the CVS pharmacy on Linfield Street. The witness provided Officer Bonfanti with a registration of a vehicle he observed fleeing the pharmacy before police arrived on the scene. Officer Bonfanti queried the registration plates through the registry of motor vehicle, obtained data and descriptions of the vehicles and the names and address of the owners. No matching records were found on the registration. Officer Bonfanti self-initiated an investigation using skills that he had acquired as a police civilian dispatcher and continued to use as a sworn police officer. He queried several police lights in partial and user varied combinations. As a result of his investigative technique, Officer Bonfanti obtained a list of owners' names of various motor vehicles. After reviewing lists, he recognized the name of the owner, who a family member had a history of criminal activity. Officer Bonfanti queried the records of the family member and discovered a criminal history check, including several charges for breaking and entering. He then notified responding units to check the residence of the potential suspect. Upon arrival, the officers were able to develop probable cause to place the suspect under arrest. As a result of Officer Bonfanti's ability and relentless efforts to develop information from a partial registration plate and further query and use the technology available to develop that lead into probable cause for the officers there, he is officially commended. Officer David Bonfanti is officially commended for his attention to duty, his devotion to duty, his skills and investigative technique as being in the highest standards of policing. He shall receive 1 day's compensation time, and this letter shall be entered permanently in his file. Also, Officer Bonfanti, not his first time here at the podium. David, congratulations. Thank you. Sergeant Arthur Yo, now Lieutenant Arthur Yo, Officer Fred Wojcik, Officer Mark Sayer, Officer David J. Murphy, Officer Richard Cameron, Officer David Bonfanti. On February 6, 2011, at 15:22 hours, the Peabody Police Department received an emergency 911 call and report of a person with mental health issues in possession of a firearm threatening to commit suicide at the Homewood Suites Hotel. Officer Wojcik and Officer Sayer responded and began to clear the surrounding area and gather intelligence. Sergeant Yo arrived and took control as the incident commander. Sergeant Yo also developed an operations plan and requested an ambulance to stand by. Hostel staff were removed to safe locations while all officers strategically positioned themselves to minimize the risk. During a tense standoff, the subject refused to negotiate or to open the door. A ruse was used and the subject opened the door. Under the leadership of Sergeant Yo, an entry team of Officer Wojcik, Officer David J. Murphy, Officer David Bonfanti, and Officer Rick Hammond entered the room with weapons drawn. The subject threatened the room and refused to obey their verbal commands. During a struggle with the police, the subject reached for a bag containing a loaded semi-automatic handgun. The officers used minimal force to overcome the resistance offered by the suspect, and he was taken into custody without serious injury. I wish to officially commend Sergeant Yo for his leadership and Officers Mark Sayer, Fred Wojcik, David Murphy, David Bonfanti, and Rick Cameron for their attention to duty, their devotion to duty, and the apprehension of the armed suspects. They exhibited the highest standards of professionalism and the highest standards of restraint. These officers shall receive 1 day compensation time, and a permanent letter of recognition, a permanent letter of commendation shall be entered into their file. Gentlemen, congratulations. Thank you. Did I miss something here? Sergeant Robert Waugh, Detective Stephanie Lane, Detective Eric Rickey, Detective David Murphy, Officer Antonio Santos, Officer Matthew Mason, Officer Gerald Fitzgerald, Officer Lonnie Johnson, Officer James Leclerc. A number of our officers that are receiving awards today, obviously Detective Lane and Officer Santos had prior engagements that they were long before we got this, and so we asked the other recipients if they would receive the awards on their behalf. So. On November 11th of 2011 at 4:28 p.m., the Peabody Police Department received numerous 911 calls from the Leahy Clinic emergency room, reporting that a male subject was out of control, damaging equipment, assaulting both staff and patients with a large metal object. On arrival, Officers Mason, Tony Santos, Jerry Fitzgerald observed the hospital staff huddled outside the emergency room, bloodied from injuries, and received in a vicious attack by a suspect who continued to terrorize those inside the emergency room. The officers tactically entered the hospital and observed staff and patients barricaded in rooms in fear for their safety. Other victims were